when he's being very specific? Do I say the original Hebrew Jewish scriptures? Do I say Septuagint? Do I say Old Testament? Right? So first we have like these different categories. We can start thinking about empires, right? Which empires and governments developed over time. That way we can begin to think about how we begin to weave these narratives, and this leads into this, into this. So when we take stuff out, we can hop and jump from one category to another category. One of the biggest problems in our educational processes is we silo information. I learned something in Hebrew Bible that has nothing to do with New Testament. I learned something in New Testament about exegesis. That doesn't have to do with what I learned in history. We need to open our minds so that we're not siloing information. I could ask somebody what's 6 plus 7, and it's like in New Testament class, we wouldn't be able, I don't know what 6 plus 7 is. If we say that, all right, we're doing some arithmetic, you're going to take a class of basic math, all of a sudden it's like 6 plus 7 is 13, duh, right? It's because we silo this information. And so what we want to do is we want to start making stories, making narratives, thinking about these things so that we're associating the specific terms that I use with different things, and we're actually beginning to place things in relationship to each other. You would not believe how many people say that the New Testament came before Jesus. When I ask questions, the New Testament came before Jesus, right? Or how many times I ask questions and people will put Moses before Abraham, right? It happens all the time because we're not used to actually playing with these things as events and parts of a narrative and a story and a world that we use. We're so used to isolating them as like this, and this, right? And so with the timelines, that's what you're really trying to do. You're trying to you take your socks off. You're trying to play with these things as much as possible to create and imagine different narratives, different trajectories, different ways that they're in relationship, and begin to understand that these terms, just like scripture, right? The New Testament is not scripture, right? It is not. The New Testament is only scripture once it is located within a context of Christ-believing individuals that view it as authoritative, right? The Quran is not scripture. The Quran is not scripture until when? Until it's placed in a particular community context. So when you see me using the word scripture, you have to understand that's a context, right? Another term that will show up on your test that people get tripped up. How many authentic writings of Paul are in the New Testament?
Is it 7?
Not enough info.
Not enough information. Correct. When I'm using language like authentic and Deutero-Pauline, those are contextual perspectival. Because if you say authentic, then you're saying someone is making a claim that Paul wrote this. When you say that something's Deutero, someone's making a claim that Paul did not write this. So if you see authentic and Deutero, those are contextual terms that unless I tell you what the person believes, unless I tell you what's going on, like that's a contextual claim, authentic or Deutero. Now, if I ask you, Eddie,
yes,
how many undisputed works of Paul are in the New Testament?
Okay.
That's 7. Because regardless of what I believe or you believe about how many works Paul wrote, we can't debate the fact that 7 of them are undisputed and 6 of them are disputed. But that's where we want to be specific about our language. We want to be specific. And I want you all to begin to understand, if you say that Paul wrote there are 9 authentic epistles of Paul in the New Testament, that's cool. That is a claim, right? But understand that as soon as you go to another person, another context, they're not going to necessarily believe. So if you're in mixed company, if you're in so forth and so on, it might be better unless you're going to say I, right? I identify X number of authentic, so forth and so on. And so, likewise, every time y'all read the Bible, every time y'all are reading your New Testament, every time you see the word gospel, you need to be saying under your breath, euangelion, good news. Every time you read Christ in the New Testament, you need to just put them in your room. Every time you read Christ in the New Testament, you need to, under your breath, say Christos, Greek, Meshiach, Hebrew, anointed one, right? Every time you see disciple, you need to say mathetes, student, learner. Every time you see apostle, you need to say apostolos, one who is sent. Because we play and flip apostle disciple language 24/7. And so the beautiful thing is, every time you see dikaiosune, and right, you need to be saying, every time you see righteousness, you need to be saying dikaiosune, justice or righteousness. Because the more that you all learn, the more Greek and Hebrew and these other terms that y'all learn, when you read, the translation that you use predisposes you to see the text in a certain way. So if you begin to, every time you see that word in English, you begin understanding that it has multiple meanings. All of a sudden, when you're reading, you're trying to figure out what might this text mean to me and my community. You're automatically bringing it multiple interpretive opportunities. If someone says, hey, we need to pay attention to the righteousness of God, right? That's very different than someone saying, hey, we need to pay attention to the justice of God, right?
Yes.
It's the same word, dikaiosune. But if someone says God calls us to righteousness, and if you only understand that the only way to understand this word, dikaiosune, is righteousness, every time you see, Paul's talking about God's righteousness. Paul's talking about God's righteousness. God wants us to pursue righteousness. What happens if then I erase righteousness and all that? God's justice is what Paul talks about. God's justice is what Paul's talking about. God desires us to seek justice. It's a drastically different notion, right? We hear and then we thus interpret that differently. But if we don't understand, if we don't remember, when we see justice or when we see righteousness, that word might be dikaiosune, which means, and again, if you know that, you can go online to Bible Gateway, you can get out a concordance, and you can actually figure out, you can look in the commentary. So when I see righteousness right here, is it DK or ekdk, or is it actually dikaiosune? So there are tons of online concordances and other things that you could know. So all of a sudden, now you see justice, you see righteousness, or you see justification, you can say, let me check this out. And then if you see dikaiosune, you say, hold up. Does justice or righteousness better fit in this context for how I'm understanding what's going on with Paul? Because the forensic legalistic would say it's righteousness all day and every day, and that's the only way you need to understand it, right? The legalistic forensic construct would suggest that the only way to understand justice is by individual righteousness, right? Individual right behavior. And we've seen that type of moral tyranny, right, throughout history, right? Does this make sense? So I know I'm still talking about the timelines, but the timelines really connect with so much else of what we're doing, because what we're really trying to do is to untrain our brain to get rid of these barriers and these silos. So when I learn something in this spot, I still know it. It's information that I draw upon when I'm reading or doing something in another context.
Gotcha.
That makes sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Lee,
Yeah,
did you just say
no,
something?
it totally makes sense. I think like where I get lost, like, is, and these are very specific, and I can probably even post it in a group chat or something later, but like it's very clear to me that like I understand it goes Alexander, and then Persia, then Augustus and Julius Caesar, and then it's like Jesus. It's just like you said, like we're dealing with like a lot of years and a lot of moving parts that are all related. But it's like you said, a tapestry. It's just a wide thing to wrap our heads around. So thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, and the big thing, just build a like you just need to sit back and try to get a comprehensive image of what that narrative is for you, how you understand this like macro narrative. And once you figure out and write out that macro narrative about how this narrative has developed over time and what's related to what, when you start taking stuff out, right? In that case, you're not really learning 75 different things, right? You're learning a single story, right? And once you learn that single story, become familiar with a single story, you might not remember the date, but you will understand. Like, if I say that the big bad wolf went to the house with the sticks before he went to the house of the straw, you're like, no. It's straw, sticks, brick, right? Right. But we know that why? We know that because we're familiar with that comprehensive narrative, right?
Yeah.
Which then takes us to form. I'm gonna talk about form 2 first.
Okay.
Form
Yes, and
2.
before you start, hold on, before you start, mine is more of a technical question about form. When I try to fill out form 2, it auto, like if I'm at the very top of the document and I start writing and filling things out, it'll fill out boxes down the document. Like if I'm filling out if I'm filling out fields on page 1, it'll copy those answers onto answers on page 4, and I don't know
Uh-oh.
how it got, like I
So,
can't just
so
go
let
through.
me. That is so. Yeah, that is a technical form 2. So let me go. I'm gonna have to go look at that.
Okay,
Um,
all right.
yeah, I will have to look at that. That is internal. That is an internal. What do you call it? Coding thing that someone had a problem with that a couple of years ago. We rectified it. So I've I'm curious if there's the in yeah, let me check on it. Is that on form 1 and form 2 or just on form 2?
It's happening to form 2. Yeah,
Okay.
for me. Thank you.
So no, I will check that try to figure out cuz that should not be happening. Um how do you all like what are y'all so what are your questions about form 2? Like what are y'all what's
I
going on with form 2?
I'm totally lost. I don't know what you're asking, or are we supposed to choose the text ourselves or use the ones that you gave us in the lecture?
For form 2?
Oh yeah, great question.
It's
For form 2?
I'm opening up my computer right now. It is. I'm speaking of. So the exegesis guideline.
So form 1 is about Galatians 38, I want to say, and then form 2 is just about all of Galatians, if I remember correctly.
That is correct.
Okay, so that
Form
text
2.
is Galatians. Okay.
Yeah, they're both Galatians, just form 1 is only on 38, and I think and then this form 2 is all of Galatians. But I don't
Gotcha.
know if we pick a passage from Galatians or if we're doing it on the whole text.
That is correct. So when we're talking about form 2 is a cheat sheet. Y'all are not going to remember what y'all learn about most of the texts that you study in seminary. And all of these texts can be read through different prisms, through different histories, through different perspectives. And so what form 2 is It's like the short commentary before in your study Bible, right before the text. What is Galatians about? Right? If 5 years from now, someone says, "Hey, have you ever read Galatians? What's Galatians about?" You should be able to open a notebook, have 2 to 6 Form 2s filled out, and in each Form 2 kind of like says, from this perspective, with these assumptions, this is what Galatians is about. These are key texts. These are key words. These are key questions. If I'm coming from a legalistic forensic perspective, this is who Paul is. This is how I prove this is who Paul is. This is where inside the text, this is the implied audience. Legalistic forensic. This is implied audiences. It's all Gentile. It's so forth and so on. Right? This is what Form 2 is, your cheat sheet about what this entire text, what's in it, what's it about, who it's written to. It's everything that you would want to know as a cheat sheet if you wanted to talk about, preach on, or introduce someone to the text. Now, the difference is we understand that people have different opinions, historical opinions and other things, which means the Form 2 for one scholar is going to look different for another scholar. And so when you all are doing it, you all could have a Form 2 from a legalistic forensic perspective, a new covenant, new perspective approach, and from an apocalyptic approach. And to be perfectly honest, there are multiple varieties that you could do for any of that. You could do it. So let's say you did new covenant forensic legalistic reading. In one case, you might assume that Paul is writing to Gentiles only. In another, you might assume that Paul's writing to Gentiles and Jews, right? And so if Paul's only writing to Gentiles, how you read what he's talking about, how you read how he's talking to Jews is different than if you think that he's talking to a mixed audience. You might be reading Paul as oppressed. You might be reading Paul as privileged. You might be reading Paul as a power broker, right? And so all of those different assumptions about who Paul is or who Paul's writing to, those different assumptions lead you to different conclusions about what on earth is going on in Galatians. And so at the end of the day, we do these Form 2s in order to have, if I'm making these historical assumptions, this is what Galatians is about. So when you write your final paper, when you say, all right, I know there are different approaches, but for my final paper, I'm writing I'm making this assumption about Paul, I'm making this assumption about my audience, and I'm privileging this about myself. With these 3 things, what does Galatians do, say, like what is Galatians based on those premises? And then once you have it, it allows you to, in a coherent manner, go through and then say, all right, if this is what Galatians is, this is what this passage means. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, give me 2 seconds. So we can, I'm actually home now, so I'm trying to get my computer out so I can pull up the form, which my computer's locked me out of Canvas. Give me a second. Okay. All right, 2 more seconds. I'm about to log on. Oops.
So as you're logging in, the first time you posted the Form 1, I was under the impression we were supposed to be reflecting on the book of Romans, but based on what you posted this week 5, it looks like will be both Form 1 and Form 2 will be based on the book of Galatians. Is that right?
No. when we did Romans, I think last week. Let me pull that up. Give me 2 seconds. I should be able to. Where's the meeting? Today's here. Fine. For this device. Join now.
I think I see what's happening on the form.
Mm-hmm.
Where it asks for the biblical work, and we put it in. I just put Galatians in there, and I think it's just making it the header of every subsequent page for Form 2. Unless there were other spots, Lee.
All right, I'm back. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
All right. I'm pulling it up now. Okay. No, that didn't do it. Hold up, let me see. Speak right here.
Dr. Carter.
Yep.
Could y'all hear me?
Yes.
I missed you. Say that again.
I think I found out, and Lee is gone now, but I think I found out what she was talking about when she said that it posts on every page. I think biblical work on Form 2 just makes it a header for the subsequent pages. So unless there is another spot that she was referring to, I think it's only the biblical work part that when I go to the second page of Form 2, the third page of Form 2, and just those pages, it has Galatians at the top or whatever I put for biblical work, just to be the header for that next page. It's not actually answering a separate blank. It looks like,
but it is pre-filling. Okay. But
it looks like it's
else
just
able to test that.
Not at the moment.
Let me go through a few other things. I'm just gonna write some stuff.
And these are on PDFs, correct or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. No, just making sure. Hold up 1 second. Nope, that didn't work. Let's do this one more time. Form 2. All right, perfect. All right, let's go. Can you all see my form?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Hold up. Are y'all looking at a PDF or at does it say grammars or does it say Form 2?
We're seeing a PDF of grammar.
Oh, no, that's my work. Hold up.
So I don't see the grammar.
It's gone now.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it was that was actually my work. Hold up. Let's try this again. Share. PowerPoint. Window. Form 2. Here we go. Can you all see it now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we can see Form 2.
All right. All right. So as we're doing, let's open this up. Okay. So let's go through and just check it. All right. Let's see. And if anything else. So the title pre-populated. All right. So
And I tried the other boxes, and the other boxes didn't do the same thing.
All right, so let's go through this. No, let's not do Galatians because y'all are responsible for doing Galatians. Mark. All right, we're gonna do the Gospel of Mark. Okay.
Okay.
So actually, I'm gonna change this one more time because I'm actually gonna I want to be able to use a whatchamacallit, a browser so y'all can see what I'm doing. Let's take this here. Apple Gateway. Okay. Stop sharing. All right, one more second. Here we go. We're gonna boom. There we go. Should be sharing again.
Yes,
y'all
sir.
should see the form, and y'all should see a browser window.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool.
So I'm viewing all these on my phone. Is there a way I can be able to log in on Teams via Canvas?
Teams on Canvas? No, on your computer, yeah, but not on Canvas.
So on my personal computer, let me see if I can pull up Teams.
Yeah, you should just be able to go to your Phillips email, and then the meeting should be just on your calendar.
James, check our text group. I just put the link in there.
Okay, thank you.
Send it to yourself.
Yeah.
For your computer.
Yeah, thank you.
And I thought I think I emailed you also, so it might be in your email.
On my school email, like on my student email?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, shucks. I was treating y'all like y'all were my exegesis class.
Oh boy.
No, the issue is I was like, let's not do Paul. Let's do God. Let's do something in the Gospels that we've already done. It's like, oh, y'all haven't done the Gospels yet. So, but yeah, we'll still do Mark. Mark's fine. It's something we'll do after spring break. But so just FYI, when we're looking at contested beginning, contested ending, opening verse, ending verse, this is just basically where does the text begin, where's the text end, right? So if we're looking at something like, so if we're looking at Galatians, right? Where's Galatians begin? What's the first verse of Galatians?
Galatians 1:1.
Exactly. 1:1, right?
Okay.
Why is this? Oh my goodness. Why is this font so small? It says 1:1, trust me. Right? So you just put 1:1 right there. Can y'all see where it says 1:1?
Yes.
I'll have to go back and try to mess with this font. And then, where's Galatians in?
I can tell you just a second.
Chapter 6, verse 18.
Right? So 6:18. Cool. Right? So for Galatians, that's what we do. Where's it begin? Where's it end? Right? Okay. Now, this isn't always the case. Right? And so if we do Gospel of Mark, it begins in 1:1, right?
Yes.
That's fine, right? So we still, all this is the same, 1:1. And so where it says contested beginning, this right here should be a yes or no, right? So correct. For Galatians, it's no, it's not contested. Is the ending contested in Galatians?
No. By contested, what do you mean?
Like contested, like debated, like argue, like do people contest it?
Okay.
Yeah. right? And so Galatians is not. There's no contested beginning. There's no contested ending. It's 1:1, 6:18, right?
Correct.
Now for the Gospel of Mark starts at 1:1, right? No
Yes.
debates about that at all, right?
Correct.
So the answer is no. But if we look at Mark 16, right? Mark 16 ends at 16:8. So where's it end? 16:8.
16:8.
Now, your Bibles will go all the way down to 16:19, 16:22, depending on the version that they're using, right? If you put that on the spring part of the semester, you're going to get like a 0. That's not where the text is, right? All this is contested. Like that is like that is like stuff that people added because they didn't like the ending of Mark, right? But you'll be in some churches and some folks that are very fundamentalist and ignore like the ancient world and the actual manuscripts that we have and say, my King James says it stops at 16:19. It stops at 16:19, right?
So how do I know that?
You read the commentaries and you take the class.
Gotcha.
You graduate from seminary, right?
Okay.
And so your study, in your study Bible, if you look at your study Bible when you're looking at Mark, it'll have notes. Like even right here online, it says some of the earliest manuscripts do not include 9 through 20.
Gotcha.
Right? So critical Bibles will actually have footnotes, which is why it's super important to always read and look at the footnotes. And it's also important to have a critical Bible and not just like a devotional Bible, right?
Gotcha.
But so you might not remember that 20 years from now or 10 years from now. So that's why in your form 2, you want to have contested beginning for Mark? No, it's not contested. Contested ending? Yes. It is a contested ending, right?
Gotcha.
And where's it actually in? 16:8. This is really taking inventory. So you know what you need to know about the text so you don't make like little mistakes based on you've been away from seminary for 5 years. So you understand, like, is the beginning contested? No. Is it right for Galatians or for whatever text we're doing? Different texts have different textual histories, so it'll vary from person to person, text to text. Does this make sense?
Yes.
All right. And so let's say I was a fundamentalist. I'd say Mark ended at 16:20. But guess what? It doesn't change. It doesn't change the fact that it's contested.
Contested. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Right? But for my class, nah, you best not say it's 16:20. It's 16:8. All right. And so then we go to authorial claims, right? So what's an authorial claim? Authorial claim is what? A claim specifically made by the author, right?
Okay.
So let's think about the Gospel of Mark. Y'all may or may not know this, right? Or, yeah, we'll use the Gospel of Mark. Like, what's the authorial claim? Who does the Gospel of Mark say that the author is?
It doesn't.
It doesn't, right? Like, so we need to know that there is no authorial claim about who wrote Mark. So right here, we're going to say, it's anonymous. It's an anonymous text. There's no actual claim, right? So forth and so on. Let's say that we're talking about Romans. What's the authorial claim for Romans?
Paul.
Exactly, right? Where? We'd be like,
in the first
where? Verse. Exactly. 1:1. Right? So we say the author of Romans is Paul. Not only do we want to know that, but we want to have in our form 2 where we get that from. So if I say, I got in a fight with a student once when I was teaching at American Baptist College, because he got angry and mad because he said Paul wrote Hebrews. He said, Paul wrote Hebrews. I don't care what you say. And I'm like, there's a long tradition of people saying Paul wrote Hebrews. But I'm like, not only did Paul not write Hebrews doesn't even say that Paul wrote Hebrews, right? Yeah. And so we have these things. So we want to know, like, let's say I say that, Luke wrote the Gospel of Luke. That's fine. But guess what? It's no claim. I cannot say that the text is claiming this. So let's say we're talking about Titus. What's the authorial claim for Titus?
Uh,
Paul, right?
Paul, I think.
Paul. But is Titus disputed or undisputed?
Disputed.
Disputed. And virtually any scholar that you know will say Titus was not written by Paul, right? But that does not claim what? That does not change the fact that when we're talking about Titus, the authorial claim of the text is that Paul wrote it. And we can identify where in the text it claims that. Y'all feel me? Y'all see where we're coming from?
Yes.
So we're talking about, when we're talking about authorial claims, we're talking about things, regardless of whether we say that it's historical, regardless of we say it's factual or not. When we're talking about authorial claims, we're talking about things claimed by the text. So Paul, so forth and so on. What kind of does the, like, so let's say we're talking about Galatians. Does the authorial claim in Galatians, do they claim any titles?
Say it one more time.
Does the presumed author of Galatians claim any titles?
No.
Yes, he says an apostle.
Okay.
Boom.
Okay.
Exactly,
So Paul
right?
an apostle. Okay.
So
Gotcha.
he calls
Gotcha.
himself an apostle,
Okay.
right? And so again, right? These are the types of things. Oh yeah. These like why are we saying that Paul's an apostle? Because he was an apostle? That's historical debate. But we know that when we read the text,
He says he's an apostle of Jesus Christ, not of man.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So this is specifically the type of claim, and we want to know where we're getting this from. So when we're writing our paper, when we're doing research, we want to know, are we getting this from the text? Are we getting this from tradition? Are we getting this from some scholar that we read? Like this is what I'm saying. Form 2 is your cheat sheet. Right? You're taking notes. So if you can't remember where you got this stuff from, you heard it somewhere, you felt it somewhere, you pop out your Form 2, it's like, oh yeah, I made that up, or I got that from listening to my pastor for 20 years, or oh, I read this commentary, or that's something that's actually claimed by the text itself. Right? Just because it's claimed by the text doesn't mean that we're claiming it as history. But it's still important that we know what the text is claiming. This makes sense?
Yes.
So again, what titles, right? Is there any biographical or background information, any experiences that are claimed by the author of the text? That's definitely a yes for Galatians, right? If we're looking about the Gospel of Luke, people say, yeah, the author of Luke was a physician, right? That is not claimed by the text, right?
Right.
And so that does not need to be here where we're talking about things claimed by the author. Y'all feel me when we're talking about these authorial claims?
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
Then we have the implied things that the author does not say, but things that are still based on the text, but they're implied, right? So for instance, implied. Actually, there are a number of things. Well, can y'all come up with any things that are implied by the text? Or let's talk about Romans, because y'all got to. So anything that from y'all's quick reading of Romans or First Thessalonians that is implied.
An implication from Romans.
Yeah. Y'all can start simple.
Okay. Paul didn't write it. Paul never went to Rome.
Exactly. That's a good one, right? That he hadn't been to Rome. That he hadn't been to Rome before that. Now that would be borderline. I would accept that in things that he claims or implied. But I think it better fits in the implied,
okay.
right?
Okay.
But no, but because there are parts in the text where Actually, yeah, that could go in either one, but that's exactly the type of thing we're talking about, right?
Okay.
Some other things. You're on mute, James. You're on mute, James. You're still muted.
He's addressing the Gentiles.
Boom. Exactly. That's what a lot of people say. And different people will have different perspectives. But a lot of people take that, like, they read Romans and they think it's implicit that he's exactly. And then you'd go through and say, all right, what are some things, like, where are some places in the text where I'm making this assumption, where I think it's implied that he's doing X, Y, and Z, right? For some of the I've like that Philippians, right? That he's in jail, right? It could be metaphorical. It might not be metaphorical. You know, there are things that we use to really begin to build, right? Someone might say something about Romans that he's trying to garner favor, right? Or one might say something that Paul affirms women in the ministry, right? He doesn't necessarily say, I affirm women in the ministry, but when we're looking at Romans 16, he lists all these women with these roles, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, like, so these are things that Paul does say, I affirm women in the ministry, but at the same time, it is one reading might imply that he so forth and so on. So again, these are claims, right? The fact that he is an authority, that he has a role of authority, right? That he's on par with Apollos and Peter, right? There are these different things, right, that are important that sometimes we project, but they can be deduced, right? Because it's implied, right? That he's skilled at Greek, right? That he's skilled at Greek. That's something that's implicit, right? And so these are the other things that are in the so y'all understand the difference between the authorial claim and then the implied author?
Authorial claim, the implied.
You see the two categories? You got the authorial claims, things that the narrator of the text actually says, and then we have the things that the narrative that are implicit within the narrative about the historical context and the background.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we see that. Yeah, authorial and implied. Yeah, see the difference. Yeah.
And then, so we do the same thing, the stated audience. Who does the text say, or does the text say who this audience is? Exact same thing. Stated audience, characteristics, experiences, exact same thing that we did with the author, we do with the stated, right? And then we do the exact same thing with the implied audience characteristics. Are they believers? Are they not believers? Are they insiders? Are they outsiders? Are they Jewish? Are they Gentile? Are they privileged or not privileged? Do they like Paul? Do they not like Paul? Are they in harmony? Are they having debates? All types of things, that you can imply based on the different aspects of the text. Right, and then you have the reasoning, right? Like, why do you think these things about the audience? Why do you think Romans is addressed to right? These are implications. Because remember, this is your cheat sheet. You think cheat sheet.
When you say reasoning with citations, are we supposed to like literally get like places within the text, like the book of Galatians, where it's been stated there?
Yeah.
Is that what you're implying?
Exactly. So let's say you think Galatians is written to. I don't want to. Let's say you think Romans is written to a Gentile, all Gentile audience. You want to find a passage that you think suggests that, right? And then, so let's say at the beginning, like Romans 1:2, it says it's addressed to the saints in Rome, right? So you say, because we're talking about a Roman, it's addressed to people in Rome, I think the audience is all Gentile, right? So you think that the Gentile goes in the characteristics, right? And then why is them being Roman suggests being in Rome, right? Because Rome had non-Romans in Rome. You might then say, well, the Jews were exiled from Rome by Caesar in 54. Claudius expelled the Jews from Rome, and if the Jews were expelled from Rome in the 50s, my assumption is that the majority of the Jewish population was expelled. Therefore, if he's writing to Rome, the people left in Rome are like, that's the type of reasoning that you would say, right? Or you might say that I think he's talking to a mixed audience because he talks about Jews and Gentiles, and there was a large Jewish population in Rome, and you don't think the expulsion was everybody, right? Like, sometimes the texts themselves can be read in multiple ways, so you want to give yourself a little sentence or a little nugget, because remember, we're thinking about using this 5 years from now, so that 5 years from now, even though you know why you think it's saying Romans suggests that it's a Gentile audience, you want yourself 5 years from now to know why you thought that then. Some of the worst feelings is when you work really hard on something, you spend a lot of time in it, and you really are proud of yourself for the work that you did, and then you come back 2 years later, like there's a sermon that you wrote or something that you've done, you come back 2 years later, you freshen it up, and then you're looking at it, and you're like,
how did I get there?
Yeah, like,
Oh my gosh, I was so off base. Oh my God, what did I tell them people?
Like, no, but not even off base, Eddie. Like, sometimes you were like, that's good, but is it right? Like, how did I
Where did I get it from?
Like,
it sounds good.
It sounds
what's my source for this?
and so that's what we're really looking for with these notes. You take out your Form 2s. You know, not only do you have what you were thinking, but you give yourself a little hint, a little nugget, so that you can remember. These Form 2s are for 5 years from now. And so the rest of this is literally like, when do you think it was written? Right? Now, again, this can be done a bunch of different times. Like, for the Gospels, it's way different, right? So some people say the Gospels were written in like the 2nd century. Some people think it was written before 70. So all that stuff. Like, for Paul's stuff, it really matters if it's Deutero or authentic. If you think a text is authentic, you know it's going to be written before the late 60s, right? Because we believe Paul died in the early 60s, right? And so something like Galatians, where it says, you know, I was here for 14 years, I was here for 2 years, I did, like, so you can start doing math to say, all right, Jesus dies around 30, 33, right? And then you're gonna, add, 14 years and so forth and so on. And so you can start to get a window of this was probably written between here and here, right? And you start getting dates like that, you can say, well, it was probably this Caesar or that Caesar, right? And then if you have, in some text you can do it, some text you can't, right? What genre is Galatians or Romans or Titus?
Epistle.
It's an epistle, exactly, right? Why do you think it's an epistle? Y'all have learned the different parts of the epistles. Can you recognize them? So forth and so on, right? And this is where you're taking your really more subjective notes, like, what are the primary topics, what are the primary themes, right? What do you think the author, not what do you think the text means for you, but what do you think the author was trying to accomplish, right? What are some key distinctives, key passages, key works, key words, key things that, like, 5 years from now, if you say there are 4 things I do not want to forget about Galatians, what are some of those 4 things? Remember, this is a cheat sheet for 4 years from now, right? And then we have, like, you can put some information about some of the, like, everything up to this point is really about you engaging the text, engaging history. Then we also have like your commentators, the scholarship that you have. So then you're just putting some notes down, right, about some major things, right? Major scholarly presumptions. Is it deutero? Is it disputed or undisputed? Right? Was it written at this time or that time? Like this is where we're building these things bit by bit. Does that make sense in terms of what we're talking about and
Yeah,
how we're using
yes.
Form 2?
Yes, it does. That
Yeah.
helps a bunch. Thank you so much.
Okay. Now, this second part here is more of an exegesis guideline. So y'all don't have to worry about this at this point because y'all aren't doing the full exegesis. But this is basically two forms put together. But when you're doing the exegesis guideline, this is where you're going through and you're using your Form 1 to try to get through some of this material. Because a lot of this material is coming straight off of your Form 1. Does that make sense?
So Form 2 has almost like has two sections.
I would say this Form 2 has 3 sections, right?
Oh, 3 sections, yeah.
You've got the first page, which is basically you engaging the text itself and history.
Yeah.
You've got the second page here, which is where you're doing. Well, actually, no. The first 2 pages is where you're dealing with the text itself. The third page is where you're really putting notes about what scholars or commentators say.
Yeah.
And then everything after that is what you're really starting to play with when you're trying to like write an interpretation out.
Okay.
And that's why the title changes. It says Exegesis Guideline, right?
Yes, yes.
All right,
So basically what you're telling us, we're gonna have to take you need to take your New Testament exegesis class as well.
No, you can. You're always welcome to. You're always welcome to. But there are always different approaches because like it's helpful when you take the same person twice, but when you've got 2 like informed and different but really good New Testament professors, well, I'm gonna count myself a good. At least one good one, and then you got me too, right? There's value to actually getting both approaches. You know what I'm saying? And so I literally never encourage people to definitely take both of mine or take one, because I don't think you can go. I don't really think you could go wrong by taking 2 with either one of us or taking one apiece. Right? It's just hard to go wrong. Just because y'all, I think I give y'all good
Ready to burn this
stuff,
straight up.
and I know for a fact that Professor Carter, because he was my professor for a year, so I've taken classes with him, and so I know for a fact he gives you great stuff. All right, I'm about to pull out Form 1. Preview. Okay, let me do Form 1 now. Boom. Can you see Form 1?
I thought I had that.
I just put it on the
Good
I
morning.
got rid of the Bible section and I just put it on that. Can y'all see it though?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
What did they do for
For
us?
some reason, I wasn't able to.
Not much.
Are you serious?
Form 1.
They spent most of their time trying to lift it up more.
Now where Form 2 is all about,
Still got to put
all about
well,
you know, telling me what this entire text is about and giving yourself a cheat sheet for 2 years from now. Form 1 is the opposite.
good.
Form 1
Yeah.
is not about doing an exegesis. Form 1 is about paying close, consistent attention to a very specific passage and figure out what you see and why you see it. It's about reading and interpreting a single passage and making sure that how you're reading it makes sense. And so you can
Where you
do
headed?
the exact same passage 50 different times,
Where you headed?
right? Because what you're doing with Form 1 is you're tracking and tracing the different interpretive decisions that you're making in each single interpretation.
Get some gloves.
Because what we don't want to do
And
is
I
to
left
make
from
3
in my car.
assumptions, right?
Got too many minds.
When we're interpreting like 3:18, and then we get to verse 3:19, make 3 different assumptions about the same stuff, right? That's inconsistent. That's incoherent. That's just a hot mess. If we're making these assumptions about Galatians in 1:1, we want to make sure that we're making the same assumptions about Galatians in chapter 3. So if we decide to read Galatians in a forensic legalistic in chapter 2, when we're reading in chapter 5, we still need to be making the assumptions of forensic legalistic. Now, that doesn't mean we always have to use forensic legalistic. It just means that if we decide to switch it up, we need to switch it up 1 through 6, chapter 1 through chapter 6. We don't want to be reading, we don't want to be reading this chapter using this assumption, this chapter. No, we can read the text using any assumptions that we want, but we want to make sure that we're being logical and consistent, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And so when we're going through Form 1, we're looking at first, all right, we got your name. Context is everything. We're disclosing our name. Second thing, right? We're choosing a community.
I need to go to the
for
gate.
who we're reading right this instant.
To the gate.
And this is one of the important things. And I've got students every year that get a 0 and get hammered on their forms. Because I've said it in the lecture, I'm going to say it again. Do not say you're reading for your class or for Phillips. Do y'all hear me?
Yeah.
It is unacceptable for you to say that you're doing your Form 1 exegesis reading and you're reading for Phillips. The reason I say you're not allowed to do it is whenever community that you choose, it needs to be a community that you know and you know well. It cannot be a community that you're making assumptions about, or that you think act this way, or you think this way, or you think, right? I'm not going to do a Form 1 where I'm saying that I'm reading for the Nation of Islam. I'm interested in the Nation of Islam. I'm interested in engaging with people from the Nation of Islam. I am not familiar enough with the Nation of Islam to make assumptions about the internal identity and the workings there. I do not work with a homeless ministry. I do not. I think that it's important to read for, to be in. I believe that that's important work. I am neither unhoused, nor am I super familiar with the unhoused community. So I'm not going to choose. The unhoused community is a valid context to read for, to, or with. But for my Form 1, I'm not going to choose the unhoused community. Now, let's say one of you all, same thing with prison ministry, right? But let's say one of you all actually, you're not unhoused, and you haven't been formally incarcerated, but let's say you're active in a ministry that engages with those communities, or that for whatever reason you're intimately familiar with that. Even though you're not unhoused and never have been unhoused, you can still read and interpret. I didn't forget. Okay. You still can read you still can read and interpret with that I'm in a meeting. You still can read and interpret with that community, right? But you need to be sure in your heart of hearts that it is authentic, that you can claim not to be a part of them, but to at least be familiar enough with them to know that you have an understanding. And when you're describing them, you're not just making projections and stereotypes about what you think this community needs is acts whatsoever. Does that make sense? And so biblical scholars, for most of y'all on this call, you wouldn't say that y'all are reading for biblical scholars. Because at this point, y'all are not familiar enough with the guild, with scholarship, so forth and so on, to say that that's who y'all are actually reading and being in communication with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Some people will say, well, I'm just reading for my own edification. You cannot say that either, right? Because when you're reading for yourself, you are imagining a people, a community, a society. You're imagining yourself, you're projecting yourself on the world, right? And so even when you say, I'm just reading for my own edification, you're really projecting an image of yourself in society. So you need to identify who you're projecting, what community you're projecting, what parts of your identity you're projecting, and identify that community as who you're reading or who you're projecting. There are wrong answers, but there's no real right answer. It's just about being specific and being intentional. Does this make sense? And this is the cycle, because this happens all the time. You go through Form 1, you get to the bottom, and you realize that you messed up. Because you could say, I'm reading for my congregation, right? And then you say, I'm reading for New Jerusalem Baptist Church, and then you start describing your church, right? And then you're going through, you're answering the rest of these questions, and you get to the bottom, and then you realize all the interpretive decisions you made is actually not for your church. It's for it's for clergy, or it's not for your church at all. It's for the people that you're trying to do evangelism to. So all of a sudden you got to go back, change your answer in question 2, and make sure that the way that you're answering each section is consistent and coherent with what you're claiming to do. Does this make sense? So don't think I answered question 2, I'm good. Nah. You answer question 2, you go through, answer the rest of them, and then you got to go back and make sure that what you said about question 2 makes sense in the stuff that you're answering about the rest of the stuff. Does that make sense? All right, and so then we're doing the exact same thing, right? When we're describing your context, who is your context? What demographics matter?
I think so.
What identity things matter? What are things? What are their needs? What are their problems? When we read, we frequently read with a need. They need to be encouraged. They need information. They need to be comforted. They need to be challenged. They need a new vision. They need new knowledge. They need to see the presence of God right now. They need an experience. How we interpret the text and how we explain how we interpret the text shifts and changes based on who we're talking to and what we say that they need. So this Form 1 is we're info dumping. We're putting as much stuff down as possible so that we can make sure what we're assuming about who we're talking to and why we're talking and what they need is consistent. All of a sudden, you'll say that my community, they need to understand. They need to understand that they need to understand that God requires them to be active in the community. They need to understand that justice is more about community than it is about individual benefit, right? And so you say, but what you think is they need to know this. They need information. So all of a sudden, you're giving them facts. You're saying this scholar said this, and this word means this, and dikarsine, that means justice, and you're giving them all these facts and facts and facts and facts, and you're saying Jesus wants this. I need you to know this. This is the will of God. Right?
Outside rings.
What happens is you just failed.
It'll sit on the top of the inside ring.
You said
They got to be flush on the end.
You
So if
you
you set it up there,
diagnose your
4
community
grange in,
as
you got to
needing
push the tub out.
vision
So it's flush,
of
welded in.
seeing the
Go to the
world
next one.
differently,
If it's too
of
far,
existing in a drastically
push it
different
out.
world. That's what they need. They need to see themselves as love. They need to experience themselves as a part of justice. They need to understand and have a vision and a feeling and a notion. They see the world and they see
How do
greed
we
and
get in? How do we get in
power
there?
and individualism and selfishness. They need to look at the world
Okay, so
through
we're
different
gonna block
lenses.
the
They need to
garage.
see the world as connections of sin and love and Jesus
You should be able to go
breaking
right
through
over the
opportunities.
superstructure.
They need to
drop
see
right
the
down
world
there.
differently.
Okay.
If somebody needs to see something
Where is
differently, why are you giving them information? They need vision, and you up here feeding them information.
Yep.
If
Okay.
if somebody needs vision, is information going to help them? Nope. And so you diagnosed them correctly, but when you decided to read, you decided
right,
that,
gentlemen.
information will get them what they need. That's the very Eurocentric and Western approach.
Roman just gave me a brief
Information
overview.
saves. Information saves people that have wrong information or don't have information. Information doesn't save people that have no vision. That's the problem with a lot of preachers get up here. They get up here and they say, I need you to volunteer. I need you to do this. I need you to do this. I need you to do this. God wants you to do this. Preacher gets up, giving data, information, commands. Data, information, commands.
It could be right there.
The congregation doesn't need data, information, and commands. The congregation either needs an experience, they need new relationships with the world, or they need to see something different. And so the issue is not the Bible, the issue is not the congregation. The issue is somebody broke their leg, and you gave them a Band-Aid. Band-Aid ain't gonna fix the broken leg. They need a cast. They got a stomach ache, and you give them an ice pack.
Okay.
Right? This is what Form 1 is trying to get us to do. Disclose who we're talking to, what is important to them, what do they value, how do they have identity, what do they need. Then you're identifying the text that you're reading, and you're trying to make sure that this is consistent. What is your relationship? Are you a pastor? Are you just one of the bunch? Are you you're describing your position? Because we need to acknowledge if we've got authority, we need to acknowledge that authority.
All right.
If we have no authority, if we're an outsider, the last thing we need to do is to show up preaching like we they daddy. Right? When that's not our positionality.
Go up and drop some rope.
What we read and how we communicate what we read should be informed by our positionality, our privilege, and so forth and so on. Because we need to make sure that if we have authority, we don't need to be abusive. We need to have good models. If we're speaking truth to power and we're the outsider, then sometimes we need to challenge that. We need to be aware that we're challenging it. So again, we're getting this stuff that we often take for granted and ignore. We're getting it out. Because at the end of the day, we're acknowledging this stuff informs and shapes how we read and how we communicate. Therefore, if it shapes how we read and how we communicate, it doesn't need to be hidden. It needs to be disclosed. Even if you don't disclose it to them, we need to disclose it to ourselves so that we're not slaves to our subconscious. We don't want to be enslaved to our subconscious. We want to be active in terms of making decisions to the best of our ability. Does that make sense? So that's what we're doing with question 4. That's what we're doing with question 5. And that's literally what we're doing as we're, right? Does the community view this as scripture? That matters. You can't go in here and say, thus saith the Lord. If they're like, yeah, that ain't nothing to me. And likewise, we have to be careful about how we're describing it if they do view it as scripture, because we know we're dealing with something that's authoritative. So we don't want to take something that they already view as authoritative and then enhance it to be abused. Right? That's what Form 1 is doing, right? So I'm going to pause there. Are there additional questions? Like, does that help kind of like understand, like help y'all explain like what and how y'all are trying to go through and engage with some of these questions and the things in Form 1?
That's been extremely helpful.
James, you're muted, James.
Go ahead, Steve.
No, I was just saying that was extremely helpful. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying it was extremely helpful having that level of detail because, you know, even though I thought I knew what you were wanting, just hearing that not only helps me for the class, but I'm sitting here like, dang, I just did, and I'm kicking myself. I should have just done better last year because I just got through doing a series over Acts chapter 1 through 12, and I should have been sitting in your class this semester. So I could actually be going through an exegesis of Acts with you, because I'm like, man, if I would have used this form.
Hey, where are the stairs?
Yeah,
Chris?
this is going to be a part of my sermon prep. Like, I got to preach something, and I'm scared because I got to come to New Jay and preach. I hope you're not there that Sunday. But I'm gonna pull this form out and just kind of help me get some groundwork laid. Because your pastor was mean to me, but that's another conversation.
Oh, that's actually really important. And I need to also say this for two things, right? This form is not an exegesis form, and it's not a sermon form. This Form 1, it's getting everything out. It is not the final product, and it is not an outline. A lot of people get hammered because they spend a ton of time on this form and they master it. And then when they get to the exegesis paper, they literally try to copy and paste everything in the form for their paper. That is not what this form is. This form is the behind the scenes work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You come to my house and I say, hey, I'm cooking dinner. I'm cooking dinner, right? We're gonna have some collards. We'll cook some collards.
I'm about to get out of here and go.
I'm gonna cook the collards. I'm gonna have some turkey necks with it. Might have some deviled eggs.
Right over there somewhere.
Might do some like fish. Might do some like sea bass or something, right? And then we're gonna have a salad or something, right? Like a Caesar salad to go with it. So I mean, a lot of times I have like two greens, like my hot greens and my cold greens, right? And what y'all don't need to see are eggshells on your plate with the deviled eggs. You don't need to see the stems of the collards that I chopped off or the rubber that I took off. Like, that doesn't need to be on the plate.
No.
Right? Like, that's all the stuff you gotta do to prep the meal. You don't need all the potluck, all my potluck like stuff from the bottom of the greens. I don't need to give you a stew. I'm not gonna like cook the greens and then just give you a bowl and like dump all the stew, all the potluck. No, you just want the greens. I'm gonna strain the greens. You don't need all that pot liquor. Why? Because just because I had to do this work, just because I had to prep this stuff and do this stuff, doesn't mean you need to show it on the plate. Some of that stuff is trash. That nasty matted stuff that the raw meat comes on, that goes straight in the trash, bruh. Right? You don't put that on the plate. That's dangerous. That's nasty. That's what this form is. This form is you washing your hands. This form is you cleaning out your workspace. This form is you literally going through the preparatory work so that you have everything that you need to actually prep the meal and then present the meal. So there will be lots of the stuff on here. Some of the stuff you can't copy and paste, or at least adapt it for the form or what for your sermon or for your exegesis. But a lot of the stuff, short of you sending me a form to look at, no one needs to see it. It's the preparatory work that you do, so you then know that you're doing a consistent, targeted, informed, appropriate, meal for your folks. You cooking for diabetics, you don't real talk. You got someone that's diabetic coming in, and you up here with sugar, like cakes and all this other stuff. Like, what are you doing? The form, or you got someone that can only do gluten-free. This form is making sure that what you're preparing is appropriate and intended for who you choose. You can choose whoever you want, but once you choose them, you want to make sure it's appropriate. That's what this form is. And so that's another thing that people don't get the form. They work hard, they get the form, and then all of a sudden, they're so happy that they get it and they're so proud. They just think that they just copy and paste. It's just take out the questions and then boom, that's my exegesis.
I have a question. I have a question on this form 1. Are we choosing a text? Is that right?
For form 1, man. Hey, chill out. Be quiet. Chill out. Hush. Yes, for form 1.
She looks like daddy.
For form 1, say hello. For form 1, yes. Form 1 is about specific passages, right? Form 1 is about specific passages. Tell me what you want. What's the problem? Why are you making noise?
What TV show?
You want to watch a TV show?
Yeah.
You can't watch a TV show up here. All right. What did Mama say?
No show.
Have you had bath yet?
Yeah.
No, you haven't. All right. Go ask Mama if you can watch Moana.
That's a good one, Moana.
Yeah, go. Anyway, sorry about that. But no, so so that makes sense. Yeah. Form 2, it's the entire work.
So for form 1, does it matter if we choose a text from Romans or Galatians or Philemon?
For you talking about this week?
No, yeah. So when we're doing form 1, especially when we come to number 6, when we are reading to the community, there's question 6, question 7. We'll have to pick a text. Is that right?
No. So for this, you're gonna pick the text in number.
Is it 6 or 7? Or
it
8?
Is 8. It's 8. It's 8.
Yeah. So the text that we pick, does it matter where in the Bible?
It varies. For this week, I gotta look specifically at the assignment for this week. Let me see.
I feel like that form is from last week. This week,
I'm reading the form. Yeah, from last week, because that's when you posted the first form.
Right. Last week, I think it was Romans.
This week
is Galatians.
Correct. No. Is it Galatians?
Yeah. And if you look at form 1, it's on there, so you don't even have to guess on that one.
So
are we pre-populated?
Are we picking a text? Are we picking a text from Romans or Galatians?
It's pre-populated. This week is, I think it's Galatians.
Yeah, go to this week, James. You on last week. Last week, and forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn, Dr. Carter. Last week, that one wasn't. We were supposed to do that to get a feel for the form. This week,
you didn't turn it in, right?
Yeah, this week is the one that's actually due. So it would suit you better to look up this week's forms, because that information is actually on the actual. It's gonna say Galatians. So
you see here. So you see here, James.
Oh yeah. I see that. Submit, Galatians.
Now you still have you still have some power this week, I believe, because
so we'll go wrong.
Because it says a section or part of Galatians 3. So it's not necessarily all Galatians 3. You can look through, but it needs to come from Galatians 3.
I see. That's clear. Thank you.
No worries. I need the table. So we'll share the table. Use the table here.
Jack, I think all my questions are answered. I still want a one-on-one, but man, I know what it's like to be a daddy. I need to go be on my daddy duties too. So I'm gonna let you go. I'm done.
Nah, because my wife's got a meeting right now too, so she's just been going back and forth.
I think you've made a lot of things clear now.
I'm sitting in the car right now at the baseball fields with two girls playing.
I understand it. And that's why before, and I don't know if it's worse or bad, like I'm willing to do, like if it's ahead of time, like I'm willing to do 10 o'clock, like 10:30, because like a lot of kids are asleep by then. But I know with work sometimes that's too late. But like that, not like sometimes, like I had a exegesis class maybe 3 years ago, and they as a class met on their own. They just started like trying to figure it out, started meeting on their own on Wednesdays, and then they were picking people to ask me questions that came out of their own study group. And then like, so every 2 weeks, they would invite me to their own study group at like 10 o'clock at night. And they were like on like different parts of the country. And so literally we would meet like 9:45, meet for like 30 to 45 minutes, and they would ask the questions that they developed. And so just because of the time and stuff, there are ways to, like the 6 o'clock hour might be too right after work and too kind of like kids still around. So we might need to do earlier or later, or find a specific time in the middle of the day. But we can work it. Like we can find ways to work this office hours thing.
Yes, sir.
You there? You good, Eddie? You still there? Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, that's daddy. Yes, sir.
Y'all funny. Anything
I know
else?
all about that.
Oh man. And she been bullying her sister. So.
Like that, right?
You good, James?
I'm good.
Robert?
I'm good.
Yeah, that helped me out a whole lot to understand and decipher exactly what you was wanting on those key points. Because like you said, you got to get on that form too. You got to get it right in the beginning, because if you don't set it up right, from there down, it's gonna be a train wreck.
Mm-hmm. It is. And remember, both the Form 2 and Form 1 can be done multiple times with different responses. The goal is that your responses are coherent.
Drop it down.
That how you answer on any specific form, the first question fits with how you answer. You what? It's not locked. It's not a touch screen.
It's not.
Mm-hmm. Eddie, you there? You might not be available.
Gotcha.
Well, Stephen, you still need some one-on-one.
Again, I would
Hit
like
me
to
up.
say,
Let's find some time.
and you all have to excuse me, but it's the truth.
And if y'all have,
If I'm talking to any of you all and my breath stinking,
you're gonna have more questions.
and we have some of you does.
As y'all start playing with
I
it,
forgot to brush my
go
teeth,
ahead
my
and
tongue.
jot down some more questions.
Please, if anybody walk up and give you a mint, don't feel embarrassed. Take it.
What's the
because they have a reason.
What's the best way to get hold of
So y'all, this is true. I'm not just telling you just talking. I'm talking because it's the truth.
The phone number
and it's going around.
Your syllabus is a cell.
This thing is going around.
So, like, if I'm unavailable, I don't answer. So, I mean,
the Bible says that they shall take up serpents.
Because yeah, I'll ignore it if I'm not available, and I'll respond to it.
They shall
You can
not hurt.
email.
You're in trouble when you get
Either
big.
like whatever.
Well, inside it feels like that I'm going to bust.
Honestly, it's the type.
They do it, make sure that God's moving on to do it, because there's
If you're
death
trying
in
to
it.
set up a meeting, trying to set up a meeting for time,
I know a man who has died because of this.
These are the Pentecostal serpent handlers, a congregation of Christians in the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ in Kingston, Georgia, who take the Bible literally and whose practices are banned in most parts of the United States.
Been bit 116 times.
I see your back.
And with cottonmouths, northern
But
copperhead,
if it's
southern
something that I
copperhead,
can like
dog-bend
explain or like
copperhead,
send you another
western
article,
diamondback, and
then
Pacific.
so yeah, it really depends on what you're trying
Really,
to
I
do.
don't care what's going to
Like,
happen.
for,
If I'm going to die,
specific
I'll die with it, and I'll be fine.
content
I know I could
email.
die,
If you've got
and I
like
know
a
it could hurt, and some of them do hurt me real bad.
or a let's set something
And
up,
the last time I got
go
bit,
ahead and text me.
I was down a few days, but I got bit with 2 rattlesnakes the same night, about just like
Well, with that, I'm gonna let y'all
right in
go.
here.
I appreciate y'all. Keep
And
up the work.
well,
Doc, we appreciate you, sir.
All right.
Yes, we
Thanks
do.
for taking time.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries. Hey, follow up for real. Like I'm dead serious. Follow up. This is just the first one.
We'll do.
Yes, sir.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
All right, man.